I thought it was really interesting that you said you remembered the study,
Mhm.
the Metcalf study that demonstrated the importance of genetic testing. And I hear you got to meet some of the authors that participated in that research. Tell us about that.
That was kind of a cool thing. I do go to lots of conferences because I want oncologists to be aware of the services we provide. And
Mhm.
I also, putting a face on hereditary cancer also is something that is impactful for physicians, I have found. So I go to a lot of conferences, and um, Dr. Funmi Olapati had asked me to I mean, and she's like a guru in genetics, and she had asked me to come to a conference she was having, and they do it jointly with City of Hope every other year. One of them hosts it. I'll be actually next week at City of Hope's conference in Los Angeles. But anyway, Dr. Olapati said, "Please come." And on the fourth invitation, I said, "Okay, I'm coming." Um, and so I get to this conference and am talking to this gentleman and who ends up being one of the authors of that study. I didn't know it at the time, but he was asking, why do you do this? And I said, well, I'm just passionate about it. It's my pay it forward in life. And he wanted to hear more. And I said, yeah, the Metcalf study was a study that actually just changed my life. And he said, "Well, she's here at this conference." And I said, "No, no, I didn't
Yeah.
know." So as soon as I saw Dr. Olapati, I said, "You got to introduce me to Dr. Kelly Metcalf." And that night we met, had her picture made, and then I've actually done a couple of things with her since then. And great, great person who has her study was has saved many lives, and she's got lots of studies, but that one I think was in 2004 or 2005, and it's been very impactful. So it's exciting that we were able to meet and become friends.
Yeah. Oh
Dr.
man.
Steve Narod as well, and also Dr. Elapati was part of that study, as well as um, Henry Lynch. He was part of that study as well. So a lot of people that are familiar.
It's great to see and hear that come full circle. It just puts, as you said, it puts a face on it, but it just makes it real for even people like myself who want to empower patients out there how to have the language to advocate for themselves and understand why it's so important. Okay, I don't want you to miss also that you just mentioned um, that it's not a one and done thing. Even though you might have a a let's say you don't have a pathologic mutation, you don't have BRCA, but you might have variants of unsignificance, right? Variants of unknown unsignificance. They're called VUSs if
Right.
in the industry. What implications do VUSs have, and how should patients deal with that?
Well, a lot of times patients aren't aware that they have a bus, but if they are made aware, then they're kind of concerned. The way that the industry is, the studies show that for every variant of uncertain significance, if it's reclassified, if they get enough information so that it can be reclassified, they've seen enough people with this particular mutation, and it's reclassified 91% of the time, it's downgraded to benign. But there is that about 9%, 9 to 10% of the time that it's upgraded to pathogenic. And so that's very important to know. The labs let the doctors know. There is some issue and some concern because some people, they are hard to keep up with. Doctors move, patients move. So there is concern. But, if someone's interested, and this is one thing I do for people as well, if they have a bus and they want to know what the status is, and I mean, they can always contact the lab that did the test for them if they're aware of that and check on status. But we go on to ClinVar and we check that for patients as well. And we actually recently had one that we assisted with that had been upgraded. It was a Lynch, an MLH1 mutation that had been upgraded from a VUS to pathogenic that
Hmm,
we were able to share with that patient.
that's awesome. So, do you guys help those who may need to connect with genetic counseling, or if in their insurance program may not pay for it, or they may not have a designated indication? Do you help with those services as well?
We do, and we've done this in many ways. again, depending on we're a small nonprofit, although we are national. We've funded testing and genetic counseling in 40 out of the 50 states in the
Mm,
US. Um, we have, but we have a pretty decent um, social media presence that we've developed, and we're only 5 years old. So I was looking at the numbers for the 2024. We had amongst our different social media avenues, we had 3,458 posts that we had.
wow.
We had we have 10,625 current followers, and we
Oh,
had 2,041,444 views last year.
let's go,
So
Kathy.
so
All right, yeah.
who knew what one person could go out and do and the difference that a person can make, but if you're passionate, you can, and I am. And so the reason I bring that up is through social media, we've had some promotions, campaigns where we'll say, if you have a family member with a known mutation and you've never tested, we'll test you free.
Mm, that's awesome.
And we would do a patient-initiated test, with the labs that allow us to do that. And, in doing that, we've really found some crazy, crazy stories. One was a patient whose daughter had a BRCA2 mutation, and she wanted to know if it came through her. She had not had cancer, her husband had not had cancer. So we tested her, and in fact, she did have the BRCA2 mutation. She also had an APC mutation.
Mm,
And this is my pitch for when you're doing testing, I'm very much into doing panel testing as opposed to just a single gene,
yes.
because you don't know what else there is out there. Um, anyway, so she had both of those mutations. Well, she had twin sons, and she asked um, one of her sons asked if he could also be tested. We tested him, and he had both BRCA2, he had APC, and he also had BRCA1.
Wow.
So we tested dad. Dad had BRCA1, and the twin brother tested, and he had all three as well.
Yeah.
And this was in a joint, campaign that we were doing with J-Screen and Kick BRCA. So this was we like to work with other nonprofits very much. I mean, we're much stronger together, and so that was part of a campaign that we had, but, I mean, that was life-changing for that family.
Yeah, it was.
Um, we had this is kind of a crazy story, but another example of why it's important to go to conferences. A doctor I met at a conference had a patient who had a nodule on her thyroid, and she was not, meeting criteria. She was a Medicare patient, not meeting criteria for testing. He said that she had had uterine cancer in her 20s, but you have to be currently affected under the Medicare guidelines. So he said, I need help with getting her tested. She has a daughter who's had breast cancer, and the daughter did not do testing. So we'd like to test and see if she has a mutation. Well, anyway, long story short, she had a TP53 mutation, which is Li-Fraumeni syndrome, and you've got about a 100% chance that you're gonna have cancer. Well, as soon as her doctor saw that, he removed that cancerous thyroid, and the rest of the family was able to test, and the rest of the family, all of her kids had the mutation, and grandkids as well.